You're watching Crux of the Matter, viewers. The capacity of the left liberal ecosystem to delude itself never fails to amaze. Remember the time when the Congress-led opposition would posit Bangladesh model to taunt Modi and expose the NDA's alleged failures? That wasn't a one-off. The Economist, another favorite left liberal punter, has now gone and picked Bangladesh as the, quote, country of the year, unquote. In an editorial, it waxes lyrically about why it did so, seemingly glossing over the stunning slide into chaos that we're all witnessing in our neighboring country. But this is what The Economist magazine says in its defense. It says, and I quote, Henry Kissinger, once dismissed as a basket case, is still a test, but no longer in the sense of being the bare minimum that others should seek to surpass. Now Bangladesh has become a standard for others to live up to, unquote. Yes, viewers, this is The Economist magazine, the so-called respected Economist magazine, on its choice for Country of the Year. Now, viewers, standard for others to live up to is the refrain. That's a bold assertion, but one totally divorced from the hard facts. Bangladesh is slipping down the ranks very fast into the abyss of Islamist obscurantism that has reduced Pakistan to a near failed state status. Consider these facts. The country's post-COVID recovery has been hindered by high inflation, a balance of payments deficit, and financial sector vulnerabilities. Inflation remains the biggest concern by far, averaging 9.7% in FY24, with food and energy prices driving the increase. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has come out and said that the real GDP growth is projected to dip to 3.8% in FY25 from 5.8% in FY23. A large number of weavers and others employed in the textile industry in Bangladesh are fleeing to India to find jobs because its mainstay, which is the textiles sector, is imploding. Islamist extremism poses an existential threat to the nation, and you know the reasons. They've been well documented. Sheikh Hasina was ousted from power in a dramatic military-backed student Islamist coup threatening democracy. The situation, viewers, in short, in Bangladesh is a matter of serious concern for India. Delhi can't afford to be ring-fenced by not one, but two failing states that pose a threat to its way of life. And I'm talking about Pakistan to its west and Bangladesh now to its east. The question is, how far will Bangladesh slip? What risks does it pose to India? What can India do to mitigate the risk? Let's have an informed discussion with Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow of the ORF, Professor Brahma Chileni, Strategic Affairs Expert, and Salauddin Shoaib Chaudhry, Editor of The Blitz, a Bangladeshi newspaper who's been in the news, I must say, for some theories that he has been spinning. But tonight we're not going to go into some of those theories about Rahul Gandhi and so on and so forth. We're going to focus really on the situation within Bangladesh. Usually, viewers, we get people from Bangladesh that are completely in denial, seem to be extremely partisan in their point of view. So with the editor of The Blitz, we just hope that we can get a more balanced view coming out of that country. So first of all, let me start with Salauddin Shoaib Chaudhry, the editor of The Blitz, to ask him, how far do you think Bangladesh is going to slip? You have a bird's eye view, Mr. Chaudhry, sitting very close to those that are actually running the country. What do you think is going to be the outcome in the next few months or even years?
Thank you very much. Actually, the elements who have planted Mohammad Yunus into power, they have their own agenda. And as you mentioned that the GDP is falling in Bangladesh, and Islamists and jihadis, they are on rise. In my 37 years in journalism, I've never seen that Al Qaeda and Islamic State flags and dozens of the Palestinian flags are on display in the street, and jihadis are openly chanting slogans against the Hindus and religious minorities. So clearly, Bangladesh is heading towards the fate of a failed state, and Pakistani ISI and its collaborators, they are actively working to turn the country into a land of absolute chaos and anarchy. And it's not only failed state like Pakistan, but it would be even worse. Pakistan is a failed state and a terrorist nation, but Bangladesh, in the, as you said, in the next 1 or 2 months, if Yunus continues in the office, and if there is no international uh, consequences, then in 1 or 2 months, Bangladesh will become really a serious threat to regional nations and also to the international, I mean, the whole world. So Bangladesh is really becoming a dangerous place, a
Okay,
very, very
dangerous place,
dangerous.
you say. Now, Sushant Sareen, let me bring you in. The question, maybe I should rephrase, because some people will say that, look, the gentleman whose face we are seeing on our screens right now, the interim head of the government there, is somebody who is a Western, specifically American deep state puppet. And therefore, America will ensure that this regime, A, will not be allowed to collapse, and B, the state itself will not be allowed to sort of fritter away. Am I right to assume this, or is this beyond everyone's control?
Rahul, what has been the American track record of keeping its puppets in power? And for how long? And what has been their track record of dumping their puppets when they can't hold on to power? So, yeah, it's good to have a puppet in power, but if the puppet cannot pull his own weight, as clearly the so-called Nobel Peace Laureate it seems to be at odds in running the country efficiently and effectively, then of course, I don't know how long the Americans can persist with him. But look, while there is no denying that Bangladesh is extremely precariously placed right now, not just in because the economics in the country is going out of sync, and huge problems await the economy. After all, it was only a one product economy, which noted economists in India it seemed to escape their attention. You know, people who pontificate on how India's economy should run and would hold up Sri Lanka and Bangladesh as examples to us, probably should have examined these economies much more closely rather than just going after some data that IMF used to publish or rags like economists, heap encomiums on. The fact of the matter remains that the economy is precarious. The politics is out of sync. They haven't got any kind of a roadmap on how to get the politics right all over again. And you have a whole lot of these Islamic terrorists who have been released and who are roaming around in the streets. And then you have Bangladesh flirting with Pakistan once again, and Pakistan smacking its lips at the possibility of using Bangladesh to stir up trouble in India. So now this is at one level what is happening. But at another level, you also have, I would say, some probably some indications that maybe things will be pulled back. You have an army chief, if his interview is anything to go by, who seems to be pretty realistic, who seems to understand the strategic importance of keeping relations with India on an even keel to ensure that Bangladesh takes care of India's security concerns, and so will India take care of Bangladesh's concerns, and that we can have a mutually beneficial relationship. Something which many people in India also feel, that unlike Pakistan, which is a completely gone case and a lost cause, Bangladesh might still, be able to recover from the kind of pit these guys have dug for themselves. But they need to get their act together, which clearly they don't seem to be able to do right now. Now, can the Americans help them do it? God help the Bangladeshis if they're looking to Americans to fix their problems for them.
Okay, that's interesting. Mr. Chileni, obviously, the consensus right now between two panelists is that in the short term, things are going to deteriorate there. but there is also a feeling that they will get better before it's too late. Do you share that sort of view that there might be at some point a course correction for the better?
India's foreign policy cannot be based on hope. We should be clear about that. We should also be aware that this regime in Bangladesh, even though it lacks constitutional legitimacy or mandate, has the backing of three powerful forces. One, the military, which installed this regime. Two, the Islamists, who are clearly instrumental in Hasina's ouster, and who are the muscle behind the present interim regime. And third is the United States, which is propping up the regime financially through multilateral lending and other assistance, politically, in fact. And that's the reason why the Western media is giving Bangladesh a free ride. They are not at all talking about the internal situation there, the human rights abuses, the persecution of the Hindus, the thousands of political prisoners now rotting in jails, the extrajudicial killings in Bangladesh, a whole host of human rights abuses have been sought to be ignored or whitewashed. So given those realities, the India's challenges actually only accentuate. India has so far pursued a policy toward the new regime in Bangladesh of trying to be nice toward it, trying to have normal diplomatic relations with the interim regime, in the hope that what happened in the Maldives, where the Islamist leading president has now moderated his views on India, largely because of dire financial straits in which the Maldives find itself. So the hope in India is that a similar situation which is arising in Bangladesh financially would moderate the behavior of the regime there. I don't think that parallel is going to come true, simply because in the Maldives case, these forces that Bangladesh's interim regime enjoys, those three powerful forces are not behind the president of the Maldives. So we should be clear that the way things are panning out in Bangladesh, these developments pose a direct challenge to India's security, and the developments in Bangladesh are going to further exacerbate India's security challenges, especially in the northeast and also in relation to West Bengal. So India has two things to do, which it's not doing. The first is that it needs to speak up. It doesn't speak up. It doesn't raise its voice. If it doesn't spotlight what's happening in Bangladesh, who else will speak up? Okay. After all, the Western governments and the Western media are not going to speak up on Bangladesh. And the second is that India has to invest resources on upgrading its border security. The porous border between India and Bangladesh will have to be effectively managed through both technology and manpower. We need to invest considerable resources in ensuring that this border becomes a border that is effectively managed.
Okay, it's interesting. Brahma Chireni talked about the military, the Islamists, and the US. Sushant Sareen, you know Pakistan very well. In effect, what he's talking about really is the three A's: the army, Allah, and America, which was supposed to have propped up Pakistan for years altogether, but we now know that that edifice really has crumbled, at least given the fact that America is now at a distance, and there is clearly some sort of dissonance between the aims of the Islamists there and the army. That's the impression one gets. So if it's the three A's, then Bangladesh is going the Pakistan way. Would you agree?
Look, of course, I don't disagree with anything Brahma has said. In fact, my own point is that Bangladesh is extremely precariously placed, but there is still a possibility that they might pull back from the brink. But yes,
No,
Bangladesh.
illustrate that point. How will they pull back when they've already got these three aces up their sleeves, which we know has taken Pakistan to literally a point of no return? We keep talking and hoping that Pakistan will pull back from the brink, but it just edges closer and closer to it.
No, but I don't know why anybody hopes Pakistan will pull back from the brink. I neither hope that nor expect
No,
it
the
to
Aman
happen.
Ki Asha Brigade, and you know them.
So I thought we are indulging in a serious program,
Yeah.
not talking Man Ki Asha, Rahul. You're a serious anchor, not one of the Yasha type. But listen, here is the thing. In Bangladesh, why I say there is still a hope, because, when you look at some of the statements which have come out, whether it's from the interim foreign minister or it's from the army chief, it seems that they're certainly, realizing that, look, you can't go hammer and tongs at India and think that that's an answer to your survival. The Americans are not going to go into Bangladesh beyond a point. There is no way, unless of course they want to destabilize the whole thing, in which case we are talking about something completely different. Yes, they've got a regime change. Yes, there was a lot of lobbying which was taking place in the United States, partly by the Muslim Brotherhood characters, partly by BNP and by the Jamaat-e Islami. And we've seen a lot of that lobbying which was taking place. And that clearly seems to have worked with the Biden administration. Now, whether the Americans are going to fund Bangladesh beyond a point, I don't think that's going to happen. Which way is the army going to swing? Is it going to be an Islamist army, or is it going to be a much more pragmatic army, as seems to be the case from what the army chief has said? And then, as far as the Islamists are concerned, I think that is going to be a problem. Now, if Bangladesh is going to go that the radical route and become East Pakistan once again, at least psychologically, if not practically, then there are going to be consequences beyond India. Bangladesh will have problems. For example, in Myanmar, Bangladesh will have problems, including with China. Bangladesh will have problems in Southeast Asia, where they depend hell of a lot for a lot of things. So I don't think that's a route that the Bangladeshis can afford to take. Which is why there are some people in Bangladesh who understand, it's all very well for these half-read, half-educated so-called students to, strut around, act as though they're some kind of superman, and talk about annexing parts of India and, other kind of nonsensical stuff which they're spouting.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they're taught in their colleges and schools. But the fact of the matter is that if Bangladesh is going to go down that route, then there will be very, very severe consequences for Bangladesh. As for border management, look, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? But border management has been a problem for the last 50 years. And one of the bigger problems is not just the fact that you don't have the requisite systems, you also have a very corrupt bureaucracy which takes 50 rupees and lets in people.
Yeah.
What do you do about that? What do you do about the personnel who are posted out there, who are bribable and who are ready to sell their souls and their country for a few hundred rupees? And I haven't seen anybody really being penalized for it. I haven't seen anybody being hauled over coals for it. I haven't seen anybody being dismissed from government with it. I might be wrong. Maybe there are a few people, but how many people have you seen?
True.
The government crack down on their own staff, which allows this kind of nonsense to happen along the borders. So no matter what systems you put in place, if your own people are bribable and ready to sell the country, there's nothing you can do about it.
I think that's a valid point. But the one part, Mr. Chaudhary, that Bangladesh has decided to sort of go down is this pivot to Pakistan. Now, what's behind this pivot to Pakistan?
Thank you very much. Actually, as you know, as we know, that these so-called students who are supporting Yunus, they either belong to Hizb ut-Tahrir or Jamaat Islami. So what is happening in Bangladesh are the agendas of Hizb ut-Tahrir and Jamaat Islami. And they have set a date, 15th of January, for abolishing the constitution of Bangladesh and declaring Bangladesh either as an Islamic republic or a caliphate. But the silver lining is Donald Trump is coming on 20th of January, and Donald Trump is not a friend of Mohammad Yunus. Rather, Mohammad Yunus is clearly known as Trump hater. So I'm looking forward a stern action from the Trump administration and our military administration, as some of the panelists mentioned about the army chief. They also understand the risk of holding Yunus at their front, because of Yunus there would be even sanctions on some of the top military brasses in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh is clearly heading towards the risk of either falling under the access of international sanctions or have to liberate this country from this current scenario. And in that case, I am seeing that Yunus is actually going to be ousted very soon, and he will end up in jail, same as Mohammed Mursi, along with the so-called student protesters, those who actually belong to Hizb ut-Tahrir, Jamaat Islami, and even Al-Qaeda.
Okay, so let me bring in Mr. Chileni. First of all, Mr. Chileni, why did the US meddle in India's backyard? Was this some kind of payback for not towing their line on Russia, perhaps obeying the sanctions? Was this a kind of pressure point, number one? And number two, do you share the optimism of Mr. Chaudhry when he says Trump is now going to come in and Trump and Yunus don't get along, so everything is going to go back to normal? We're going to see Bangladesh sort of once again warm towards more progressive ideologies, and there will be stability, perhaps even elections, maybe this time free and fair.
The regime change in Bangladesh was the work of the US deep state. The question we need to ask ourselves: can Trump rein in the US deep state, or will the US deep state rein in Donald Trump as it did in Trump's first presidency?
So 1 second, before you get to that, Mr. Chileni, explain to the viewers why the deep state, and India and the US, we have this real relationship going, that's what we're always told. Why would they do this, first of all, to create instability in our backyard? So explain that, and then of course you can move on to whether Trump can actually do something about this.
The US has had a long-standing foreign policy that seeks to contain rising powers. These powers might be US-friendly powers, but the US has a history of seeking to contain rising powers. So to keep India boxed in, they believed that the ouster of the India-friendly Hasina government was necessary. And we knew what the Biden administration was doing almost from the first year it took office. It began targeting Hasina government. And then just months before the elections in Bangladesh in late last year, it began threatening visa sanctions against top officials of the Bangladeshi government. We sent our foreign minister to Washington, and we thought that we had persuaded the Americans to see sense and to cooperate with India on Bangladesh, saying that the option, the replacement option in Bangladesh is worse than what we have in Sheikh Hasina. We never understood the game that they were playing, and we were taken by complete surprise, which we shouldn't have been, because there was a pattern for 4 years that I was seeing of Bangladesh government being sought to be destabilized. But to get to the real core of the issue in Bangladesh, we should not forget what's happening there, or what's happened first. What happened in Bangladesh? The regime change, one person was the key to the regime change. That was the army chief. He was instrumental in forcing her out, because he ordered his soldiers not to enforce the curfew. So when the writing on the wall was very clear, she had no option but to leave Bangladesh. In fact, he packed her off to India. He packed her off to India without giving India a choice. India did not know until she took off from Bangladesh that she had been deposed. That was the situation in which she was forced to flee. Today, we should have no illusion whatsoever that things are going to get better in Bangladesh. Just imagine this unconstitutionally installed government has had the temerity to try and place India on the back foot by sending a note verbal to India on Sheikh Hasina.
Yes, true.
What is the purpose of this note verbal? To basically up the ante against India. And we sent the foreign secretary to Dhaka. That visit was very ill-timed because it happened at a time when the Yunus regime was whipping up anti-India sentiment, forcing even the two independent news organizations in Bangladesh, the Daily Star and the Pratham Alo, to start whipping up anti-India sentiment through their editorials and their news reports. When these two newspapers were reluctant,
Right.
the regime sent an Islamist crowd to protest against the Daily Star office, and a Pratham Alo office was burned down. After
Right.
that, these two newspapers also fell in line, just the way the judiciary has fallen in line. So we should have no illusion that whatever statements are coming might indicate that they might
So
change
will
their stance on India.
will Trump?
As it is, I think the way things are going, they are determined to take on India.
Okay.
They're determined that despite the fact that India has all this leverage over Bangladesh,
Yeah.
Bangladesh depends on India
Yeah.
for daily essentials, for electricity, for petroleum products. India is not exercising the leverage.
Okay.
And yet, Bangladesh regime is willing to take on India.
Well, viewers, we've had a comprehensive deep dive into the situation there. Whether Trump can actually affect change or not, we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think India has the luxury to wait and see. New Delhi can't just wait and see, as Brahma Chileni and Sushant Sareen have mentioned. They need to be proactive. They need to do something, perhaps to catalyze a change that will be in some ways beneficial to them. I leave it at this, viewers. We'll have a conversation in depth about what India can do in the following weeks. Thank you for watching.